Hello and welcome. My name is Faz Kareem, and this is Excel Intermediate using Excel 2019. I'd like to give a short little introduction video discussing what we're going to cover. In this class, we're going to go ahead and learn about the difference between a list and a table, as well as some useful features with charts in Excel. And then later on, we're going to dive into pivot tables, and once we master that, we're going to learn about protecting worksheets and workbooks, as well as linking various cells from different worksheets and different workbooks together. Through this course, I want you guys to go ahead and practice and try hands-on what I'm showing you. So how it's designed is I want you to follow along as I do each step. So I'll go ahead and let you guys know to pause the video or to go ahead and follow along with me as I do these steps. I'm a firm believer that using hands-on methods to practice Microsoft Excel really helps it stick. You establish a muscle memory, and let's go ahead and dive into class. See you soon. All right. Before we begin, be sure to download the sample file that came with the class. If you have yet to do that, go ahead and pause the video and grab that and come right back. Alrighty, welcome back. Hopefully you grabbed that sample file and you're ready to go. I'm currently on the creating table sheet of this file. And let's go ahead and start talking about a list of data in Excel. So a list of data is simply data that you put on a spreadsheet, and what we did here is we put in some headers. And each header describes the data below it. Notice how we have email, there's their email address. Notice we have a phone extension, we have a phone extension. And location describes the location, what building they're in, and so on and so forth. Now this list of data, we have a bunch of tools up here that we can use to analyze it. Like maybe in our data tab, we can go ahead and turn on a filter, which we'll cover, or we can sort the data alphabetically or numerically, or we could split up the data. Now, a list of data is great, but Microsoft Excel has this data analytic tool known as a table. So what we can do is we can convert a list into a table. We could insert a table into Excel and convert this list into a table. Now, what does that do for us? What does converting a list of data do? Well, when you convert it to a table, it's a data analytic tool. You get a set of features that you did not have with the list to analyze that data for yourself. Now, there's several ways you can convert this to a table. More importantly, there's just about two that I'm going to show you. And one's faster than the other, and I just want to show you the difference between the two. So, really quick, in order to convert your list into a table, you should have three properties for your list of data. Property number one, to convert this list into a table, is you should go ahead and have headers. Headers describing the data set below. Notice how we have pay rate, and then we have hire date, location, and phone extension, email, and so on and so forth. So these headers, they have to be unique amongst each other, meaning I can't have two hire dates, or I can't have two pay rates. That doesn't mean I can't have a pay rate 1 or a pay rate 0. I add a little numerical value at the end, but they must be unique amongst each other. Now that's guideline 1. Uniqueness amongst the headers. Now guideline number 2, to convert this list into a table, is simply having a unique header compared to the data set. Now what I mean by that is you can't have a header called building 1, because that's part of the data. I can't have a header called Howard. That's part of the data. So that's guideline number 2. You have to have a unique header compared to the data, and just in case you forgot, guideline number 1 was you must have unique headers compared to each and every other header. Now what's the third guideline? The third guideline is simply you have to have a complete data set. No blank cells, so that way our functions and our calculations can come out correctly when we use the table. Now that we have the guidelines, let's go ahead and see how we can convert this list into a table. So just in case you forgot, let's do a little wrap up of those three guidelines. Guideline number 1, we must have headers, and the headers have to be unique compared to each other. Guideline number 2 is your headers must be unique compared to the data set. And guideline number 3, you must have a complete data set for the calculations used in the table to come out correctly. Alrighty, let's format this list into a table. So we have to insert the data analytic tool known as a table into Excel. Notice how we have an insert tab here. So everyone, let's do this together. But first, be sure your cursor is inside of the data set, like so. And then go ahead and run up to your Insert tab and give it a click. Inside the Insert tab, I just want to expose you to the Tables command group, where you can find in the third option the data analytic tool known as a table. I'm going to go ahead and hover over it to expose the definition that Microsoft gave it. Create a table to organize and analyze related data. Tables make it easy to sort, filter, and format data within a sheet. Sounds nice. I'm going to go ahead and click that option. Again, I want to point out that my cursor is within the data set and give it a click. Just like that, I got the Create Table box here. And because I had my cursor inside of that complete data set, it found the entirety of the data. And notice how there's a checkmark box here asking if your table does have headers. And in fact, it does. So I'm going to leave that on and hit OK. But before we hit OK, guys and gals, let's make sure that we know the quick way of doing things and the long way in case we forget the quick way. So let's go ahead and X out the Create Table box. Notice how I hovered over here and it said Table, Control+T in parentheses. That's because this has a keyboard shortcut to activate that icon on your screen without you going to the Insert tab and clicking on it. So let's say you're on your Home tab and you remember the fact that if I hold Control and the letter T, you have the ability to activate the Insert tab's Create Table icon. And it just did that for us. Now that we know the short way of creating a table, let's all go ahead and hit OK to make this list into a table. Alrighty. Now that we converted this list into a lovely table, let's go ahead and discuss some features this data analytic tool has to offer. The first thing I want everyone to do is, now that we have this list into a table, I want to point out that we have this lovely table formatting. It has banded rows. Let's go ahead and click inside of the table and notice how we have a design tab that popped up and give it a click. This design tab is all the tools the table has to offer. Now, if you go ahead and click away from the table, the design tab will go away. It's one of those contextual features, a contextual tab. Based off the context you're using the software, it may or may not be there. Now, I'm going to go ahead and click on the table, and based off this context, I have a design tab. Inside of the design tab, I want to point out one of the features that this table has to offer is a filter. The filter button can be turned off. I'm going to go ahead and turn that off. Go ahead and try that too. Just give it a click. And notice how these little arrows went away from each of my header names, because that was the filter option. So let's turn back on the filter and go to these arrows, and notice how the filter is not only a filter down here. Notice how you can unselect an option and then filter for the criteria you want. So all the employees getting paid $9.25 and $9.50, and just go ahead and hit OK. And it filtered the table. And the only indicator that you had that this table is filtered is that little funnel right there. And if you send a file filtered, they'll receive it filtered. So they can't accidentally miss out a lot of work if you leave a file filtered without letting them know that, hey, this is filtered. So another giveaway that this file is filtered is, notice how the table goes from 3, 21, 35, and 36. Because all this filtering is doing is hiding rows from us based off the criteria we give it. So let's go back to this filter here and let's clear the filter. Notice how the option to clear the filter is right there. And I want to just expose you to another form of filtering this table has to offer, which is known as a slicer. So I'm going to go ahead and go to the design tab of the table and give it a click. If it's not there, just make sure your cursor is inside that table and go to Insert Slicer inside of the Tools command group. I'm going to go ahead and give that a click. And this time I'm going to build a slicer for the location column here. And matter of fact, I'm going to do one for the department too, because you can do two at once. Once you're satisfied, go ahead and click OK. I'm going to go ahead and give that a click. Now these slicers are another way of filtering this data set here. So check it out. I'm going to move these to the side. Just zoom out of my spreadsheet a bit as well. And if I want to filter, if I would like to filter for my location, I can just select one of these options and it filters my table. Now if I want to do more than one option, I'd turn on the multi-select. Go ahead and try that out and select another option. And then you can go ahead and use this one to filter for departments. Notice how it's also applying the funnel here. I don't recommend to turn off the Design tab's filter button. In the Design tab, I don't recommend to turn those off because it lets it know which column is being filtered here using these slicers. So a table is a great way to go ahead and sort your data alphabetically with these filter options, as well as a great way to filter the table, both filtering using the filter button, as well as a visual way of filtering using the slicers. Go ahead and play around with the table and the slicer a bit and see what you can build the table to be based off the criteria you gave it. Alrighty, hopefully you're having fun playing around with those slicers. They're pretty cool and nifty if you haven't been exposed to them yet. Now let's go ahead and clear the filters from these slicers just by hitting that little X in the side of the slicers. And make sure to turn off the multi-select just to keep them clean and consistent. And now that we have the ability to filter data, I want to let you know that this table does have the ability to find the duplicate values within it and remove them. Notice how in the Design tab, go ahead and put your cursor inside the table and go to the Design tab and give it a click. In the Design tab, you have some tools, and one of the options is removing a duplicate. So let's go ahead and build a duplicate in this table so I can show you how that can be done. I'm going to scroll all the way to the bottom of my table here to the 40th row, and I'm going to go ahead and select row 40, and I'm going to go to my home here, and I'm just going to copy the row, and then I'm going to go to row 41, and I'm just going to go ahead and paste the row. Alrighty. Now once I pasted the row, I'm going to go ahead and extend my table, because if you remember, my table went to I-40, and notice how that little blue indicator right there stopped itself. So I'm going to go ahead and extend my table to go into row 41 there. Sometimes it does not extend itself, like it just didn't there. And now that I have my table extended, I'm going to go ahead and go to my Design tab. I just want to show you the option to remove duplicates. So delete duplicate rows from a sheet. You can pick which column should be checked for duplicate information. So remove duplicates. Notice how we have every column over here. You don't have to have every column selected. You can use one of the columns that uniquely describe each of the rows. So notice how my employee IDs describe each row based off this unique value. If I find an employee ID that's not unique, that's going to imply that I have two of the same employee in there. So you're allowed to go ahead and unselect everything and just search based off one criteria, that one unique value. And once you go ahead and do that, and you hit OK, go ahead and do that yourself. Again, this was in the Design tab, under Remove Duplicates, and then we got here, OK. It says 1 duplicate value found and removed, 37 values remain. I'm going to click OK and show you that it removed everything pertaining to that duplicate value. So it removed a second instance of 1999, and it removed everything related to it. Go ahead and give that a try, adding in a duplicate and removing it. And it's not that you could have done this without converting your list of data into a table so that you have the Design tab. Because notice how the option to remove duplicates is in the Design tab. I want to just let you know that you also have the option remove duplicates in your Data tab. That's if you had a list of data and you had not converted it into a table. You would have used this route inside of the Data tab. Just want to go ahead and expose you to that. Go ahead and add a duplicate into the table and remove it just to get a muscle memory in for that. And if you have time, go ahead and pause the video and maybe try it out with a list of data instead of a table. Looking at the custom sorting sheet on the sample file provided for the class, I want to go ahead and cover a useful feature in Excel. Now, sometimes you'll be building a spreadsheet and you want to build additional columns of data. Like for example, notice how I have a last name column and I have a first name column. And over here, I want to build a full name column. Looking at it and looking at how many employees I have, okay, 52. That can be a pretty tedious task to write out all these full names. And if you know of various other functions you can use concatenate or concat to put that together. But since Excel 2013, there's this feature known as flash fill that I want to expose you to. So we can automatically just fill in all these data sets with the values we want within a flash if we give it one example. I want to go ahead and expose you to the fact that in your Data tab, let's all go to the Data tab by giving it a click. We have some data tools. Yeah, I know I said data and then I said data. I do that all the time. Well, in the data tools, you have an option for flash fill. I'm going to go ahead and show you what the definition Microsoft gave it as. Flash fill, the shortcut's Control-E for enter. Automatically fill in values. Enter a couple of examples you want as an output, and keep the active cell in the column you want filled. Let's go ahead and run through an example of that. So everyone, let's go ahead and go to cell D4 here, and let's give it an example of what we want. We want to put Hazel, and we want to put Gorton. I'm going to hit enter, and on this blank cell, I gave it my example. I want it to go ahead and do the rest for me. So let's all go to our data tab and just give a flash fill a click. Pretty cool how it did that for us. Filled in every single name for us. How this worked is it looked over to the column to the left-hand side of it and tried to see if you're doing a pattern here. It's like, oh, you did this and this together. I think you're going to do the same thing here. And it just replicated it for us. Now that we exposed you to that, I want to show you what else flash fill can do because it could save you time if you know this. So let's all undo this action by going up here and clicking undo or hitting the shortcut Control+Z to undo the flash fill. Now that we undid the flash fill, let's give it another example this time. I want to capitalize the first name and I want to leave the last name as is. So this time I'm going to hit enter, and I know the shortcut. It's Control plus the letter E for enter. I'm not going to run up to my data tab and click on flash fill because I'm just going to use the shortcut instead. So you should try that too. So I'm going to hit Control E, and now I just showed you that not only does it find patterns within the spreadsheet and mimics them for you, it also can do formatting for that pattern as well, like capitalizing the word. Go ahead and give flash fill a try, expose yourself to it, and think of all the great ways you can save a bunch of time using flash fill on your spreadsheets. We are currently on the custom sorting sheet of the sample file provided for you in this class. So sometimes you'll be analyzing data and you'll realize that if you sort the data a certain way, it will be quicker for you to retrieve the information you're asking for. For example, if you're a manager trying to contact employees, it'd be nice to have a list of all the employees' days off put together so that you're not contacting employees on their days off. Or maybe if you're a manager dealing with a bunch of employees across different locations, to have it sorted based off the location here and see all the employees in one location together. Or if you need to see a bigger picture and you need to see all the employees across all locations, it'd be nice to have an alphabetical list of everyone inside of this data set in alphabetical order so that way you have a quick way of finding people. What you're asking is to sort the data set, and I want to let you know that if you have a filter icon on the list, meaning if you go to your data tab and turn on the filter icon, go ahead and do that for yourself. You have these arrows that pop up that are filters, and we discussed earlier that there are also sort options for the column below. Now that's one way of sorting, but I want to let you know that in your data tab, if you did not have this filter on, you also have the ability to sort columns. Notice you have a Z to A and an A to Z sort. Let's go ahead and run through an example of how this works with the full name column here. I want to sort it alphabetically. All you have to do is you have to put your cursor inside of the column. You don't have to drag and highlight a range. You don't have to sit there and select the entire column. Just the cursor, just that cell address box should be inside of the column that you want sorted. Once you have that in there, you're going to run up to the data tab and hit A to Z. I want to point out that it sorted every single piece of data pertaining to that column with it. So we have everything in order still. It's just alphabetical based off the full name. Now that we have the ability to sort a certain column, what if we wanted to sort based off priority levels? Meaning I first wanted to sort on my full name, and then after I have all my full names in alphabetical order, I wanted to sort based off the locations put together. Or maybe I wanted to first have all my zones put together, and then after I see all my zones in order, try to put the locations in the best order possible based off the zones. And then once those are all in order, I want to go ahead and maybe see that list in alphabetical order with the employees' full names. So what you're asking for is to first sort on the zone, then go ahead and sort based off the location after the zone. And then after all that, make that list in alphabetical order based off the full name. You're asking for a multi-level sort. Pretty easy to do. It's actually right next to the A to Z and Z to A icons. Notice how we have a big old sort box here. This is where you go ahead and do multi-level sorts. Let's go ahead and do that exact example. So first by zone, then by location. Then after we do that, let's go ahead and do it by full name. So I'm going to click that icon sort in my data tab. And I have the full name column sort right over here. It's already in there. full name based off the cells values, not the color, not the font, in alphabetical order. I'm going to go ahead and add in a second level of sorting, except I want to go ahead and do this one based off the zone that we were talking about. The cells values A to Z, but I said that I wanted my full name to be the last level. I want it to be first priority zone. So let's go ahead and click this up arrow to move that priority up first. Give it a click. Great. So the zone, full name. Well, I still need that extra location level here. So I'm going to go ahead and add in that third level. You should too. Add level. I'm going to do zone, and this time I'm going to do location, and then full name, and then I'm going to hit OK. So now what this data set is, all the zones are going to be put together. This is everyone in Alaska. Now, after that, it's going to put all the buildings together. This is all building ones. There may be some discrepancies here because, of course, it's based off the zone first. But the reason why I did this is typically if they're in the same zone, it's a good chance they're going to be in the same building, right? Now, considering the fact there's only 3 buildings. After all that, it's in alphabetical order. So the first person in that zone's name is going to be starting with an E. That's in alphabetical order. So go ahead and play around with multi-level sorting in the data tab and see what ways you can sort the data to make it useful for you. Alrighty, we are currently on the subtotal sheet provided in the sample file. If you have yet to grab that, go ahead and grab that and go to the subtotal sheet and get started. Alrighty, hopefully you grab the file and you're back. So, let me give a little scenario for you. You're having a lovely day at work, not much work to do. Matter of fact, it's Friday. And it's around that time where you're kind of checking out, but your manager comes in and he's like, hey, I have a spreadsheet. It's actually our pair wine distribution, sales, our margins, our quantities currently. At the current state, I just pulled it from the database and I need you to find and build some data for me. I want you to find all our red sales of wine. And then after that, I want you to find maybe all our white sales of wine. And I want you to build this summary sheet so that we can see all our subtotals for the different categories that we have. And you're sitting there is like, great. Now I have to go sit there and turn on a filter and then filter for the reds and find a calculation for sales and margin and quantity. And then I have to go ahead and do the same thing for whites. And that's going to take so long because I have to do 6 different calculations and 6 different filters unless you know how to use a feature to calculate the subtotals for you. Now, I want to point out the fact that subtotaling, how it works, before we even dive into it. I just want to discuss how it works. So subtotaling, there's this feature in Excel known as subtotaling. And what it allows us to do is we get to get a column, and the software is going to run through the column, and it's going to be like, okay. And once it notices a change in that column's value, so right here it went from red to white, it's going to say, what function do you want me to run on another column? Do you want me to sum the sales from this point? Do you want me to sum or maybe find the average of the margins? Or do you want me to find the max of the quantity or the sum of the quantity? What function do you want me to run on another column? So with this being said, in order for subtotaling to find all the reds and all the whites together, we first need to sort our columns that we want to find the subtotal for. So we want to sort the type column. So let's go ahead and do that. So step 1 for every subtotaling is you must have that column sorted for it to calculate the subtotal correctly. So that's before we even touch that icon. We show you where it is. Your column has to be sorted. And if you do need to refer to the sorting videos, it's right before this to see how you can sort a column. This is just a single level sort. I'm just going to go ahead and click my cursor in here and just go up to my data tab, and I'm going to sort it from A to Z. And now that I did the sort, I'm ready to expose you to the subtotaling option in Excel. Well, we're going to deal with data, so it's still going to be in the data tab. I want to point out that you have a command group all the way to the right with an outline option. Outline. The outline command group. And one of the options over here is subtotal. So with the column sorted, don't forget that first step, that important step that's in the data tab, A to Z. Let's all go ahead and click on subtotal. Now keep in mind, it didn't really matter where my cursor was. I didn't have to have the whole data set highlighted. As you can see, it highlighted it for me. The cursor or the cell address box, of course, did have to be inside of the data set, just anywhere within the data set. Now we get to fill in the subtotal box instead of calculating each one of those subtotals ourselves using the various methods that we know. So in each change in, let's all go ahead and change that to type because that was the column we just sorted. And that's the column that says all red and then it breaks to white when we need it to. And we want to go ahead and sum up. So I'm going to go ahead and do the sales, the margin, and the quantity. If I did have subtotals that I had done before this, I have the option to replace those subtotals with these current subtotals. Since I don't have one to begin with, it doesn't matter that this is checkmarked on, so I'm just going to leave it. You can too. And I'm going to just hit OK, and you should too. Now that we hit OK, I want to expose you to the fact that on the left-hand side, you have 3 different views of the workbook. Views, we call them. I'm going to go ahead and click on the first view here. Now it shows you the grand total, and I know some of us are thinking, why does it show pound signs? Did it not work? The pound signs just mean the column's too small to show you the values within it. Just quickly go up in between the column and do 2 clicks. 2 clicks, and it'll show you the value inside of it. So first sheet is going to show you the grand total. This is all the total inside the type column. We have 45,000 in sales, 21,000 in margin, and that's our quantity there. This is for red and white. Let's all go ahead and expose ourselves to view number 2 by giving it a click. View number 2 is actually the breakdown, the thing we wanted. The red sales, the white, and then the grand total, and each value we wanted. Now view number 3, this is pretty cool. It's actually the complete data set, but if you go ahead and scroll through it, you're going to notice an extra row, well, a few extra rows added in. So I'm just scrolling through it, going down the reds. Oh, there we go. Once the red ended, it plopped in on row 181, red total, sales, margin, and quantity. Let's go ahead and scroll through it. You're going to notice down here we have the white, and then we have the grand total. So these are all the 3 views that we have. And all we needed to do was know that in our data tab, we have this lovely ability to calculate subtotals on a sorted column. Go ahead and play around with subtotaling. Try out other columns to subtotal like that. Let's see here. Try another column to subtotal. Maybe go ahead and do the groups and see the breakdowns of each group. And then after that, maybe try the part. So go ahead and pause the video, play around with it, and see what other subtotals you could come up with and expose yourself to the 3 views. We are currently on the charting 1 sheet on the sample file provided for the class. If you have yet to grab that, go ahead and pause the video and get that. Come right back. Welcome back. So let's go ahead and start talking about some charts in Excel 2019. First things first, I'm going to highlight this data set. I'm just going to use a shortcut. I'm going to click my cursor within the data set, hold Control and hit the letter A for all to highlight all of the data set. And let's talk about inserting some charts. And notice how we have an Insert tab. Let's all go to it. Let's give a click on Insert. I want to expose you to the Charts command group. We have various types of charts that you can insert to analyze the data set visually. You can go ahead and do a column, a line, a pie chart, all various types of charts. Or you can go ahead and use the recommended charts feature that we're about to cover. Let's all go to the Insert tab with the data set selected and choose recommended charts. So Microsoft Excel has gotten so advanced that based off the data set you give it, it can recommend a set of charts that you might want to use. For example, notice how I highlighted the data set and I clicked on recommended charts, and it took me to the Insert Chart window on the Recommended Charts tab right there. Now, the Recommended Charts tab shows you a set of charts that you want to use based off the data set you gave it. For example, a clustered column chart is used to compare values across a few categories. Use it when the order of categories is not important. So it kind of gives you a description of when you might want to use this chart. Then you're going to go ahead and click on the next one. A stacked column chart is used to compare parts of a whole, used to show how segments of a whole change over time. Oh, so this chart would be great to compare R. Smith week 1 to week 2 amongst himself. But this chart would be great to compare R. Smith week 1 to H. James week 1. So different charts are used for different data sets, and Excel can help you figure out what chart to use. Now, I want to point out that if you don't want to use the recommended charts and you already have a chart in mind, you have the All Charts window, the All Charts tab, I should say, right next to the recommended charts. Go ahead and give that a click too. And in case you forgot how we got here, all we did is highlight the data set and chose recommended charts. and I just move this to the side. And this time we're going to click on all charts. So we have a variety of charts Excel can use. Notice how templates is there too. We'll discuss that later. And you can go ahead and browse through the set of charts to see how it's going to look based off your data set. And you can pick an appropriate chart. I'm going to go ahead and go to the column here, pick this very first one, and hit OK. Alrighty. So we just inserted a chart. I want to point out that when you have a chart selected, when you have these dots around it, you'll have the contextual tabs, design and format for the chart. These are the chart tools. If you click away from the chart, it will go away. Now that we have the chart and we know how to insert it, from the Insert tab, using recommended charts is useful. And all you got to do is pick the chart you want and it pops up. Let's go ahead and select the chart and just hit the Delete key on our keyboard. And now that we know the proper way of inserting a chart, I want to point out the fact that if you have a data set selected and you were to hit the Alt key plus F1, it would generate a chart for you like so. It just picks the very first chart on top of the recommended charts list. It's the Alt key plus F1. If this doesn't work, try holding the Fn key on your laptop if you have one. Now this generates a chart on the same sheet of the data set, useful when the data set is small. But what if this was really large and I wanted a sheet separate for the chart? All you have to do is highlight the data set, and this time you're just going to hit F11. And then it generates a chart on the left-hand side of the sheet. So several ways to insert charts. Just go ahead and pick your favorite. And before we go ahead and practice, let's go ahead and reiterate those ways. You can always highlight the data set and go to your Insert tab and insert one of the charts or use that recommended charts tool. Or you can be clever and use that shortcut, Alt F1, to generate the chart. Just give you the first one that it recommends, like so. And if you want to have a chart on its own unique sheet on the left-hand side of the sheet that you're currently on, you're simply going to highlight the data set, and you're just going to use F11 on the top row of your keyboard to generate it on the left-hand side of the sheet, like so. Go ahead and practice inserting charts. Expose yourself to the recommended charts tool. Alrighty. We are currently on the charting 1 sheet, and we generated a chart using Alt F1 on the sheet. And I want to go ahead and discuss some features of a chart we have using Excel 2019. The first thing I want to point out is when you have a chart selected, you're going to have these little dots around it. So make sure we have the chart selected. You also have these 2 tabs up here called Design and Format once you have the chart selected. These are the chart tools. So let's all go ahead and hover over to the Design tab of the chart. And again, if it's not there, just click on the chart and it will be. I want to point out the fact that Excel has updated the way you modify and edit the chart visually. Let's go ahead and expose ourselves in the Design tab to the Chart Layouts command group and click on Add Chart Elements. Let's go ahead and remove the grid lines. The grid lines on the chart, these lines going across. Primary, major horizontal grid lines, major, primary horizontal. I don't really want any. I'm going to go to More Grid Line Options. Alrighty. Scroll down here. End size, color, solid line. I'm just going to do no line. Alrighty. And I'm going to close out that. So I put no line in there. I removed the line, the grid lines for ourselves. Let me show you the Excel 2019 way. Much simpler. So Add Chart Elements was here back in the day. Notice how there's this green plus right next to the chart once you select it. This is the same options, just easier to use. Check it out. I'm going to turn off the grid lines. They're gone. They're off. Now over here, I'm going to turn off the legend. It's gone. I'm going to turn back on the legend. Oh, it showed up to the right. That's because if you go over here to the legend, you have options. You have options for options. Go ahead and expose yourself to that. Okay, you want it to the right. Do you want it to the top, to the left, to the bottom? I'm going to go ahead and do it to the top, like so. Now, I don't ever leave grid lines on charts because it makes it look messy, but I do leave legends. We'll go ahead and put it on the right there. Just expose yourself to the fact that we now get to add in the features of the charts known as chart elements directly from the chart. Previously, we'd go up here to add them, but we can still do them that way. It's just quicker to do it from here. Pause the video, play around with the various chart elements that you can add and you can remove. Like for example, you can remove the axis there and it goes away. And you can maybe add in some data labels. And then you can format the data labels to maybe see how they're going to show up inside the spreadsheet, like so. And just go ahead and pause the video and play around with all the chart elements and come right back. Alrighty, hopefully your chart's looking nice and pretty. Now that you've played around with the icon over here and exposed yourself to all the various options and the options on top of the options, let's go ahead and see this second icon, this paintbrush here. Notice how it says styles here? Kind of ironic how it says styles right there as well. Almost the same options are populating here, if you can notice. Same options, because they are. These are just the chart styles, the various chart styles you can use. It just makes sense to put it right next to the chart if you have the chart selected, as opposed to going up here in the design tab and using it. Just various styles for the chart that you can apply if you don't have time to build your own. Now, I'm just hovering over them. This is a live preview. If I click it, it will accept it. But I'm just hovering over them. So that's what the styles does there. Now, a cool feature is you can also filter the chart. So if you want to go ahead and analyze, let's say I want to compare my first week of the month to my fourth week, but I want to ignore my other 2 weeks. Just go ahead and click on the funnel here and just deselect those 2 weeks. And if you want to dive down even further and just compare one salesperson at a time, you can also do that too by just selecting a salesperson and applying that. And then you can compare their week 1 to week 4. And as you can tell, they get a little slow towards the end of the month compared to the beginning of the month. Go ahead and expose yourself to the filter. Apply some various filters. Go ahead and reselect everything and apply them back. And just play around with all the chart elements and come right back. Alrighty. Hopefully you had some fun playing around and modifying that chart and filtering it and seeing the various options you can use on the chart directly from the chart using these contextual features of the chart once you have it selected. Now, it does take time to modify a chart and make it look pretty. It's a great thing that Excel allows you to save the modifications you've made to a chart so that maybe one day you can apply it on another data set. You don't have to sit there and remove the grid lines and move the legend to the right and all these other various features. What that's called is saving it as a template. So if you would like to get this chart and save the look and feel of it, all you have to do is get the chart and right click it. And notice how the option to save as template's available. Go ahead and do that. We'll do save as template. Now, we're just saving a chart template file here. What this is saving is all those little properties that we modified, not the data itself, not week 1, week 2, week 3, week 4, but just the properties like no legend, no grid lines, all these options. One thing I want to point out with chart templates is you can change the location of where you save the template, but if you change it, this location here, Microsoft Templates Charts, you won't be able to use the template inside of the software. So it's a good idea to never change the destination of where it's going to save it. It's always going to save it in Microsoft Templates Charts. You can save it to your desktop, but it won't let you use it inside the software. So I'm going to go ahead and call this the chart template. And not changing the location, I'm just going to hit save. Now that we have a chart template in play, I'm going to go ahead and click on charting 2, and you should too, to expose yourself to a completely different set of data. Could have had more rows, could have had less. So happens to have the same 4 quarters, had 4 weeks. Now this time, we want to use that template to generate the chart, so we don't have to spend time modifying the chart once it's built. Well, if you hover over to your Insert tab, you're going to notice there's no option for template really. But if you go to the Recommended Charts option, let's go ahead and click that. Earlier we discussed that the All Charts, a template's a chart, the All Charts tab is right next to the Recommended Charts tab. Let's go ahead and give that a click. To access the template that we just saved, you're just going to go to the Templates folder here. And if you had not saved it in that location, it won't be here. I'm going to go ahead and click on Templates. And notice how it says the chart template here. You can go ahead and select it and choose OK. Now, if you ever want to modify and delete your certain templates if it gets too hectic, you could always go to Manage Templates, and it'll open up that folder of where all your templates are stored, and you can delete them or move them or rename them appropriately, because you can't rename them from here. You can only apply them. So go ahead and apply that template. Make sure it works. Hit OK, and expose yourself to see what pieces of it stuck. So notice how the weeks did it. It's now quarters. Legend's gone. Grid line's gone. Same size is there. The power of a template. Go ahead and try to save yourself 1 or 2 templates. See if you can apply them onto the next sheet on charting 2. Alrighty. In the previous videos, we learned how to save a template and apply it. And this is the result. This is the template we built. Now, sometimes you'll have a chart built and you want to change the data source for it, or you want to go ahead and maybe add in some more data to it. Maybe you added in a new genre to it and you want to go ahead and add in some more data. And you don't want to sit there and rebuild the chart afterwards. You just want to adjust the chart to include the extra data. So I'm going to go over here and I'm going to add in another data point to my data set here. And you should too. Go ahead and put your favorite type of music. It can go ahead and be any genre. Let's see, we have country, jazz, pop, rock, rap. Let's do techno. And I'm just going to put some fake data in there just really quickly. Let's just put 1,000. I just grabbed that little autofill handle and dragged across in case you don't know. It's in previous videos in the other section. So we just have a new data set added in down below on row 10. So let's all hover over to our Design tab with the chart selected and choose Select Data to include the new data that we just put in. Notice how in our formula it goes to E9 and the dancing ants goes to 9. You can go over here and adjust it to 10. And all you need to do is hit OK. And just like that, you added in that extra value here. So now that we can add in extra data to a pre-existing chart, I want to point out the fact that sometimes you're going to want to view the chart a little differently. So really quickly, let me go back onto my chart elements and let's turn on, let's see here. We have the axis, let's turn that on. Got country, jazz, pop, rock, rap, and techno. There we go. Sometimes, what if I wanted to see these country, jazz, pop, rock as the bars and not the quarters? All you have to do is once the chart's built and you realize it's not the way you want to view it, you want to view it differently, you're going to go into the Design tab and you're just going to switch the rows and columns, and that will give you the result that you want. And if you ever want to switch it back, go back to switch row and columns. So go ahead and play around with select data once more. Maybe add in another data set in row 11 and add in that data to it. And then try seeing what switching rows and columns will do and see the reflective change. And come right back. We are currently on the Sparklines sheet in the sample file provided for the class. Go ahead and pause the video to grab that if you've yet to grab it, and come right back. Alrighty. So you have a visual manager and they love seeing charts, but your data set's too large to show a chart for each salesperson now. Notice how many salespeople I have in this data set. I have 31 rows, so 30 salespeople here. Adding in a chart for each salesperson could be a little tedious. So in comes a sparkline. A sparkline is a chart that fits in a single cell and acts as a background image to the cell. So if you wanted to, you can still type data in it. You use this when you have too many data points to show and you still want to show it visually. Now to use a sparkline, you're going to have to insert it. To insert it, you're going to have the data selected. So let's all together select May through October by going over to cell B2, holding the Control and Shift key and the right arrow to highlight the data set to the right until the data set stopped. And now that we have that, let's go ahead and insert our sparkline. To go to the Insert tab, I want to expose you to the Sparklines command group, where you have 3 types of sparklines, 3 types of charts, how I want you to see it. You have a line, a column, and a win-loss. We're going to go ahead and do all 3. So let's start out with the line. I'm going to choose that option with the data set selected. And because I had the data set selected, I don't have to sit there and grab it now in here. It already found it. I just have to put my cursor in here and pick where I want the sparkline to go. And typically you put it right next to the data set because it fits in one tiny little cell. I want it to go here, and you just hit OK. Now the sparkline has its own tab. You have a cell address that has a sparkline. You're going to get the Sparkline Tools Design tab. Now, these are the tools that you use for the sparkline. You can go ahead and maybe change the sparkline to a various different sparkline, which we'll do in a second, to the two other ones. But this sparkline's not really showing the data set. It's just showing a line going across. What if we wanted to see the highest value in the data set? Well, notice how in the Design tab of the sparkline, you have a Show command group where you can show certain points. I want to show the high point. Notice how a red dot appeared right there. Now, if you want to go ahead and maybe your high point to me should be green. If you want to change that high point to be a green marker, all you need to do is hover over to the style of the sparkline and go to the marker color. And you choose your high point to maybe be green. And it changes it to a green dot. And over here you can change it to a black line to show the difference more. So a line lets you see different various points of data here using a line chart inside of a tiny little cell. If you want to see the low point, you can turn that on. And then you can go over here to marker color, and you can make your lowest point a red. And you can go ahead and see that June was your lowest point for this data set. Let's go ahead and expose ourselves to the other various types of sparklines. And it's good practice, so do it with me. Go down to B3, hold Control and Shift and hit the right arrow to highlight the data set until it stops to the right. And go up to your Insert tab, and let's insert a column sparkline. And once more, we're just going to select where the data set would like to show up, right over there, and hit OK. And right now, it's fairly useless because all of them are all the same color. Let's go ahead and show certain characteristics of the data set using the Show command group. Like maybe the highest point, except that should be green. I'm going to go ahead and change that to green here. High point green. And then turn on the lowest point. That's red already, so that's fine. That's my lowest point. Seems like everyone's having a really low point in June here. It's really easy to tell with the visual chart. Kind of hard to tell with data. Alrighty, let's go ahead and expose ourselves to the third type of sparkline. Well, let's go ahead and highlight the data set using from B4, Control Shift to the right. Go to the Insert tab so we can insert our very last sparkline, the win loss. I'm going to go ahead and put that there and hit OK. And how the win loss works is it's going to show a bottom bar if it has a negative value. So if it has a negative value in a cell, so negative 100, just like that, it shows a bottom bar. And again, you can change the color of this bar if you choose to in the design for the marker color for the negative points. You can also show the high point with a different color maybe. High point with green. But the point of the win-loss is to show the negative values really quickly. Go ahead and expose yourself to the three types of sparklines. Play around with them. Once you find your favorite one, realize that your autofill handle will also work with the sparkline for yourself. So you can just do one, make it the way you want it, and drag your autofill handle down to fill in the rest. As you can see, Excel is a great tool to analyze data using the software, but sometimes you need to go with paper and you need to start printing certain pieces of the data to show certain people during meetings or client appointments. And usually you want to show the visual aspects of the data, not just the numbers. So you want to print out the chart. I want to let you know if you have the chart selected and you hover over to File, you can go ahead and hover over to Print. And you can go ahead and print the selected chart just like that. Another way of printing the chart, instead of you going over to File and choosing Print, you can just select the chart, hit Control and the letter P for print, and it'll go ahead and print the chart on that page. You can go ahead and adjust the chart to be in portrait or landscape. Adjust the margins. Just be sure that your printer can print out that far. And when you're ready to go, you can go ahead and hit Print. And that's how you go ahead and print a chart. We are currently on the pivot table sheet in the sample file provided for the class. If you've yet to go there, go ahead and grab that file and come right back. Alrighty. So, a pivot table, another data analytic tool, similar to a table. It's used to analyze data. It's very powerful. It's one of the most powerful data analytic tools known to man. So let's say you have a very large data set. Mine's not too large, but it's fairly large. But what if you had 60 columns? I've seen that before. And you had thousands of rows, so I've seen larger. And you want to find out maybe what's your top selling product? Or maybe who's your top selling salesperson? Or what's your top selling region? Notice you have sales here. If you want to find out this information, you can build pivot tables to summarize these data sets and build these reports for you. Now you can build a pivot table off of a list or a table. I'm so happen to use a list of data here. Now, all you have to do is you have to insert a pivot table. So with this data set, notice how it's a complete data set. I have my cursor within it. I'm going to go to the Insert tab, and I'm going to choose Pivot Table. And because I had my cursor inside the data set, I don't have to sit there and find my data set here. It already found it for me. And all I have to worry about is whether or not I want to go ahead and add this pivot table on a new worksheet or an existing worksheet. Now, I'm going to go ahead and choose New Worksheet and hit OK, and you should too. And now that we built our first pivot table, it still happens to be blank. I want to just show you the contextual features about a pivot table, because you need to have certain pieces on your screen in order to build a pivot table. Like you need to have the field list over here. You need to have the pivot table tools, analyze and design tab. But these sometimes go away. I want to point out the fact of what triggers that go away. It's when your cell address goes outside of the pivot table. So just expose yourself to that. Go ahead and click outside the pivot table. Realize you lost these two tabs. You lost the pivot table field list. And then click back and everything's back. And we're in good shape. Now that we did that, really quickly, go put your cursor inside the pivot table. So it happens to be blank right now. Go ahead and exit out the field list. Hit that X there. Now this happens sometimes by accident, and you're going to be clicking back and forth, and it's not going to come on. That's because if you read the pivot table, it says you need to turn on the pivot table field list to work with the pivot table. And you might be wondering, well, where is it? In Excel 2019, you don't need to know. You have a search bar up here. So you're just going to go up here and be like, oh, I'm looking for something called a field. Oh, field list, show it, sure, and it's back. But it is nice to know the proper spot of where the field list is. So I'm going to go ahead and show you. If you ever lose this portion of the screen and you're trying to modify the pivot table and build one, like to see who's your top selling salesperson based off the sales, you would have to go ahead and bring back the field list. But if you don't have a search bar here, what you do is you put your cursor inside the pivot table. You'd click on the Analyze tab, and inside the Analyze tab, you have a Show command group to where the field list option lives. And if you exit out, it's like you would have turned it off from there. You can turn it back on from here. You can exit out from there, and you can turn it back on from here. Go ahead and expose yourself to that. Notice the pivot table fields box. Notice how you have a search over here, and every single column name is listed down below. And you can search for a column using that search. Another thing I want to expose you to in the pivot table fields list is you have this little toolbox here. What this allows you to do is check it out. I have all these columns, month, year, type, salesperson. I just want to show you that this is actually the same order, month, year, type, salesperson that we have on our data. Unless you know the data really well, this is going to be difficult to build pivot tables, because what if you had 60 of these columns? Now, let's go back to the sheet that we built our pivot table on, and I want to expose you to what this toolbox does. You can go ahead and sort the columns alphabetically here. It can go ahead and be easier to analyze the data and build your pivot tables for yourself. Go ahead and build a pivot table, expose yourself to the toolbox, trigger on A to Z, use the search once or twice to notice what it does. It filters the box down below. And come right back and we'll build some more pivot tables. Alrighty, in the part 1 of this video, we went ahead and built a blank pivot table and discussed the textual features of what goes away when you click away from the pivot table and what comes back, and what to do when we close out the field list, and how to organize and use the field list. If you need help on those topics, go ahead and refer back to part 1 of this video. If not, let's go ahead and start building some pivot tables. Now the first pivot table, we're just going to go ahead and build one here. The pivot table that I want to build is I want to see a breakdown of the sales by salesperson on that spreadsheet. So what I'm going to do is I have 4 boxes that I have the ability to throw these columns into. I can left click, hold, and drag these boxes, these columns, into one of these boxes here. And depending on what box I throw it in, it's going to do something different to the data. Now, let's go ahead and run through this. Let's say I want to go ahead and build a filter. So I can filter for the regions and see a region breakdown. I can get this region column and put it in the filters box. And notice how an area up here got built, and I can filter my pivot table once I build it based off a certain region. Now that we have that down, you should go ahead and throw in the region, left click, hold, and drag, and throw it in the region box. You could have used the check mark, but what it's going to do is it's going to predict where you want it to go. And as you can see, it predicted wrong. You can left click from here and move it up, but I just like having a left click and dragging it into the field I want it to go in. Now, we can go ahead and get the salesperson, and we can move them over into rows here. And what that does is it builds me a pivot table with the rows of each salesperson. Check it out. I have 3 salespeople in that data set. And I want to point out the fact that try getting your salesperson and filtering by them now. Okay, it took it outside the rows. It didn't let you do that. Let's go ahead and put back salesperson into rows. And the reason why they don't let you throw in an existing row into the filters box is because if it's a row, you already have the filter. The filter is right here. If you want to filter for that row, you can have the sort and you have the filter for it. So it doesn't let you throw it in the filter box if it's already in the row box because of that icon right there. Now that we have that down, we want to see a breakdown of the sales they bring, and we have a values box. The values box is going to run a function on the data set we give it. So the sales is numerical. I'm just going to drag it into values, and right over here it found the sum of the sales. If I wanted to filter by over here, I can go ahead and filter by the regions. Now everything's looking good. We can still make our pivot table even better. Let's go ahead and sort this pivot table. So I'm going to click on this data set here. And I know earlier in the day we discussed a sort option over here to sort. But let's sort the pivot table itself and not the column. So I'm going to go ahead and right click the pivot table and sort from largest to smallest. Great. So I went ahead and sorted my pivot table. Watson's my best seller here. And another thing we can do to the pivot table is we can apply some number formattings by right-clicking it, choosing number format, and applying that currency format there and choosing OK. Alrighty. Now we have a pretty basic pivot table. It's showing us just the salespeople and the sales they bring with the grand total down below. Let's go ahead and go to our Analyze tab of our pivot table. So click on the pivot table and go to Analyze. And one thing I want to expose you to is this filter over here. It's useful, but it's the old way of filtering. It'd be nice to go into the Analyze tab. Just click on it and insert a slicer for the region instead. The thing we covered for tables in the previous videos. I'm going to go ahead and insert a slicer. And I'm going to build a slicer for the region. And I'm going to hit OK. And just like that, I have now a visual way to filter for my regions. And I can see what region's doing. I can see how each salesperson is doing for the regions, like so. Go ahead and build this pivot table. Add in another slicer for the salesperson. Play around with it. Sort and add the currency format. And if you're feeling courageous, maybe see a pivot table that shows you the revenue or the sales by region instead. Alrighty. Part 2 of the video, we went ahead and discussed adding in a slicer, as well as sorting the pivot table and adding in the currency values from the right-click way, as well as the fact that your rows have a filter here and it can't be thrown inside the filter box there. So let's go ahead and extend further on a pivot table because it can do a lot. So what if we wanted to see what these salespersons were selling, what types of products they were selling? You're allowed to get a pivot table and get 2 columns and throw it into rows. So I just got salesperson and now I threw the type of what they're selling. So Bishop selling frozen yogurt, ice cream, popsicle, and tasty treats. Now I can get this aspect of it and I can go ahead and sort it from largest to smallest. Alrighty. I can see that ice cream is Bishop's top selling and he's my top seller. And it so happens that Watson's second is ice cream. Top selling product is ice cream and he's my second top seller. I can maybe tell my other sellers to start selling more ice cream. So we can find out a lot of information on a pivot table, and you can put more than one thing into the rows here, like I just did. Now that we have that down, we've exposed ourselves to the Analyze tab of the pivot table quite some time now. Let's go ahead and hover over to the Design tab of the pivot table, to where I want to just let you know you have several different report layouts, several different ways you can view this report. More importantly, just 3. We are currently looking at it in compact form. How I describe this is we have 2 rows, but 1 column in our pivot table, hence compact. I'm going to go ahead and change that to outline form. And this shows you each row as a separate column, like so. Some people really don't like these blank cells here. They don't know if this is Watson or is this Bishop. For those people, they can go to Report Layout and they can repeat the item labels so they can see each item, like so. Makes it easier to analyze. I'm going to go ahead and turn off the Report Layout item labels by going to Do Not Repeat. And the last layout is tabular, which makes it look like a spreadsheet, puts boxes around everything. You still have the pivot table functions, makes it look nice like a spreadsheet. And of course, you have the ability to remove subtotals. These are subtotals. And as well as grand totals. You can even show them above or below, bottom of the group, top of the group. So you can also go ahead and turn off the grand total, like so. Or you can go ahead and turn on the grand total, like so. Various settings that you can modify in the Design tab of the pivot table. Go ahead and expose yourself to the Design tab, play around with it, maybe change the color scheme of it, see the different report layouts, and then come right back and we'll discuss some more features of a pivot table. Starting to notice that a pivot table is a huge function in Microsoft Excel. Now, sometimes when you're building a pivot table, you're going to have to see the same pivot table every month on different data. Or you're going to add more data to it, or maybe you're going to change the data and you want to see the pivot table, but you already have it built. Now, you don't have to sit there and build another pivot table just because you updated the data. Let's go ahead and just try this out. Let's go to the pivot table sheet here. This is the sheet that we built the data for this pivot table. This is known as the source data sheet, source data. In the source data sheet on the very first sale, let's go ahead and make that into something really large. Let's just do 1 million. Alrighty. So he had a big old sale for his first sale. Right over there, made $1 million. Now, in the North region, let's all go back to our pivot table. And let's notice, well, let's first clear the filter here. And let's notice how we don't see $1 million anywhere for Bishop. It was Bishop that had the sales. That's because you have to refresh the pivot table. You have to let Excel know that you want to update this pivot table on the newly added or the newly modified data. Several ways to refresh. Let's go ahead and run through those. Everything's always a right click away. So if you right click from your pivot table, you will see the option to refresh. If you're in your pivot table and you go to your Analyze tab, you're going to also see the option to refresh. If you hover over it, you're going to see that Alt F5 is the keyboard shortcut to refresh. And if all else fails and you're forgetting all these ways, just know that in your data tab, you have an option to refresh as well. Now that we expose ourselves to the various places that we can refresh, I'm just going to right click and choose to refresh this pivot table. And just like that, you saw the updated change. So now that we have a refresh and we saw what it did, let's go back to the source data. Let's go back to the pivot table sheet. And this time, let's go all the way to the bottom. Now, I'm just going to duplicate this row, and you should too. So select the row by clicking on the number, going to your Home tab, and just copy that row. And then going down to the next row here and hitting Enter. Now for this one, I'm just going to go ahead and add in a new salesperson. We'll just say my name. We'll put Faz. It'll be the North region. Except my sales, we're going to make it something large again. We'll put it 1 million. Alrighty, I don't think that's 1 million. Nope, that's 10 million. I'm doing even better. So I just added in a new salesperson and added in a whole new row. Let's go back to our pivot table and refresh it. So we just go to the pivot table, right click, and refresh. And we don't see a fast salesperson. That's interesting. Let's go ahead and dig down on this and see what's going on. Let's go analyze this by going to our Analyze tab. So next to the refresh, which is one way of updating your pivot table, there's Change Data Source. So I'm going to go ahead and select that to show you that the source of the pivot table, the source that it refreshes from, stops at 168 because that's what we built the pivot table off of. So that newly added row, I'm going to scroll all the way to the bottom here, is not included into the refresh every time we hit refresh. All we need to do is adjust that. To change that to a 9, I could have dragged it across, and then I hit OK. And then it automatically put in the refresh. It put me on top. The list is sorted. So it automatically sorted me up to the top, added in my salesperson, and put in my total right down below. Go ahead and play around with that and check to see if you can go ahead and add in another value to the bottom of the list and update the source data and refresh it to reflect that change. Pivot tables are a great way to summarize large data sets. Now, some people are just visual people and they're going to request a chart. You are allowed to make a pivot chart, and if you have a pivot table, you're in luck because you can build the chart based off a pivot table. Now let's go ahead and make a very simple pivot table again. Let's just remove the type breakdown from this sheet. So just drag it out and throw it out. Just have a very basic pivot table to start out with. And if you want to build a pivot chart off this pivot table, we have shortcuts to generate charts. All you need to do is hit the Alt key and you hit F1 and you generated a pivot chart for yourself, just like so. And we go ahead and select the pivot chart. You have 3 tabs that come with it: Analyze, Design, and Format. And it's basically the visual version of your pivot table. Notice how we have an axis now, it's salesperson. You have the filters, it's region. And you have the sum of sales right over here. And it just shows your pivot table visually. The same charting rules apply. You have the plus and the paintbrush. Can't filter it because it's a pivot table. You can filter it through the pivot table. But pivot charts are very simple to build based off a pivot table that's already existent. If you know the shortcuts, all you need to do is hit Alt F1 to generate it on the same sheet. If you still happen to want it on a separate sheet, you're just going to go ahead and hit the F11 key, and this will generate the pivot chart on a separate sheet, to the left-hand side of the pivot table sheet. So go ahead and expose yourself to a pivot table and the pivot chart version of it. Realize that if you move something outside of the pivot table, it's going to move it outside the chart. They're all connected. If you filter something from the pivot table, it's going to filter something for the chart. It's pretty cool, right? We are currently on the data validation sheet of the sample file provided for the class. If you yet to grab that, go ahead and grab it and go to data validation and come right back. Alrighty. So sometimes you build a spreadsheet, you want to send it out to your colleagues or maybe a client, except that this spreadsheet goes into a database, or for some reason you need to have everything spelled correctly, like the sales rep names that they're going to fill out, they need to have the date in a certain format that they need to put in, and they need to have a certain range of dates that they want to put in. Or maybe the credit limit can only be a certain value, otherwise it won't be accepted. Now you can set these certain rules to apply on certain cells to validate the data that goes within them. It's known as data validation. Let's go ahead and run through the various ways that you can validate data on a spreadsheet. So the first one is, let's say you have some sales reps and you have a list of sales reps here, and everyone keeps misspelling it. Maybe one person is putting Jack T, the next one's going to go ahead and put Jack T, and your database, that's supposed to be a J, and your database keeps having a hard time finding Jack because there's so many different versions of them, and it's hard to summarize and analyze data that way. Hence comes in data validation. Let's all go ahead and highlight the data set that we want to validate. Let's all go ahead and highlight the cells that we'd like to validate. So these are the cells. I only want these values to go within it. I need to tell Excel to do that, so I highlight the cells. Then I go to my data tab here. And over here I have an option for data validation in my data tab. It's in the data tools. I'm going to go ahead and give that a click. And for data validation here, you have some settings, an input message, and an error alert. These two are optional, meaning if you don't fill them in, they have default ones that will be filled in for you. Let's go ahead and run through this. So I want to build a list of values. I want to have a list of people they can fill in. So I'm going to pick a list, and I want to find out what values I want to use for that list. That's called the source. So these are the values I want to use for the list that I want to build for data validation. So I'm just going to put my cursor in here. I can collapse this window by hitting that little arrow to see more of my spreadsheet. Drag down on the range of cells that I want to use as a list. Hover up and collapse or expand the window this time. And I filled in the settings. Let's all go to input message. I'm going to go ahead and put title. This is input message. Just very generic so we can see how it's going to look. And I'm going to do an error alert, style stop. You can do warning, information. I'm just going to do stop. I'm going to do error alert. And I'm going to put error message just so we can see how that's going to look. And once we fill in these three settings, well, settings, input message, and error alert, we can hit OK. Now, every time you go ahead and hover over one of these cells, you're going to get the input message. You go away from it, it goes away. The input message, can it be moved? Looks like it can be. Just left click, hold it, and drag it, and it moves it away. Notice how an arrow appeared on this cell, but it didn't appear on this cell because these are the ones with data validation. If you try typing into the cell, like hello, and you hit enter, you will get the error message, like so. Now, I'm going to go ahead and hit cancel here. And each one of these cells now have a drop-down list where a user can go ahead and select. And if they don't have these matching criterias of the drop-down list, it will no longer let them put it into that cell. So for yourself, go ahead and expose yourself to the various other data validation rules that you have. And just realize that instead of doing a list of data, you can have a range of numbers by just highlighting the data set and going to the data tab and choosing data validation from here. And this time maybe choosing decimal numbers and doing a min and a max. So it's either going to be 0 or 1. Between 0 or 1, nothing else. And remember earlier I said these are optional, and you can just hit OK. So if you put in 10 here, it doesn't match. But if you put in 1, it accepts. Go ahead and practice doing a data validation for a range of dates by highlighting the date column, running up to your data tab, and exposing yourself to data validation using dates. All right, we are currently on the conditional format sheet in the sample file provided. Go ahead and go to that sheet and come right back if you're not there yet. Now, you'll be analyzing data, and sometimes it'll be helpful to point out certain traits of the data to conditionally format certain pieces. Like, for example, highlight all of the towns called Fayetteville. Or maybe highlight all of the square feet that are above 2,000 in green because I'm okay with those. And then over here, maybe Show me all the bedrooms above 3, because if it's above 3, I'm okay, but below 3, I'm not. What you're asking to do is apply conditional formats. Let's go ahead and run through various conditional formats. So notice how in your Home tab, you have a bunch of styles. One of the styling methods is conditionally formatting something. Let's go all select column B, and you want to see all of the houses that are above 100,000. And you want to just be highlighted nice and green because you're going to be okay with that. Just all go to select column B and go to the Home tab and go to conditional formatting. And if you want, we have several ways to do conditional formatting. We can highlight cell rules. We can do something greater than a certain value, less than a certain value. Between a range of values will trigger the conditional format. Equal to something. Text that contains all these various options. We're going to do greater than. Alrighty. Now, I'm just going to do greater than 100,000. And for me, if it's greater than 100,000, I'm going to go and make it a green fill with dark green text and hit OK. Let's try another example of a conditional format. Let's all click on column C here. And this time I want to highlight a certain town. You can go ahead and pick your own. I'm just going to pick the first one. I want to highlight every town with that name. And I want to make it red. So I'm just going to go to select column C, hover up to home, go to conditional format. And this time I'm going to do highlight cell rules here. And I'm going to do greater than, less than, between, equal to. Seems right. I'm going to say what I want it to be equal to trigger that conditional format. Just like that, I'm going to make it red and hit OK. Now, for square feet here, I'm going to select column D and go to conditional format. And for square feet, I want to expose you to color scales. You can go ahead and maybe make like a rubric from green to red to see how close it is or how far it is compared to the average of the numbers. So it's between a set of ranges. So the greenest is the smallest and the red is the largest in square feet. Pretty nifty. Go ahead and play around with the other conditional formats in these two columns. And when you come back, we can go ahead and show you some other conditional formats that allow you to build a formula within the conditional format. All right. I'm currently on the custom conditional format sheet in the sample file provided for you for this class. Go ahead and go to that. Sometimes you would want a conditional format and you're going through the list and you realize the conditional format that you want is not there. For example, what if we wanted a conditional format that highlights the entire row if the units is less than 5? Now, there's no conditional format to do that, hence you have to build a custom conditional format. Let's go ahead and do it together. Let's highlight the data set that we want to do a conditional format on. And let's go to conditional formatting. None of these rules are going to work, so we're going to go over here to new rule. We have several types of conditional formats that we can build. Let's go ahead and select use a formula to determine which cells to format. I'm going to go ahead and select that. And now we have an ability to build a formula to do a conditional format for us. So if I want to select an entire row and I want it to highlight it a certain color, if the units is less than 5, all I need to do is go equal to. And this conditional format starts in row 2, and I want it to run through column B, but I want it to highlight the entire row. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to absolutely reference column B there with the $sign. And I'm not going to absolutely reference. I'm going to use relative referencing for row 2 for it to iterate down each row. And once it does that, if it's less than 5, I want to format it. Let's click on the format here. Do red. And hit OK. I don't want to do the fill. Let's change that to no color here. Let's do the font color. Let's change the font color. I just want the font over to red. Letting us know that we're low in unit stock. Equal to absolute reference B2. Less than 5. Let's hit OK. And only one value in there is less than 5, and now I know which one to order, what stock to order. Now, if you ever need to change this conditional format, what if it had to be less than or equal to 5? all you have to do is go back to conditional formatting and go to Manage Rules. And under Manage Rules, you have the ability to edit the rule. And I'm just going to do less than or equal to 5 and choose OK. And I'm going to hit OK this time. And as you can see, the conditional format applied and updated itself to the data set, like so. Go ahead and give that a try. Try out another type of conditional format, maybe a different formula in there to see the results that you want. I'm currently in the linking data sheet that's in the sample file provided to you. Go ahead and go to that sheet. All right. So in Microsoft Excel, you have spreadsheets inside of a workbook, and you can actually link a cell to a cell from one sheet to another sheet, or from the same sheet, or even from workbook to workbook. Let's go ahead and start out with the simplest of them all, linking one cell's value to another cell. I want to put A1's value inside of this cell here. I have to use a formula to do that. So let's all go ahead and click on G7 here. And we have to put equal for a formula and just select the cell you want it to be equal to. And you hit enter. It went ahead and linked those two cells. If you change the value from this cell and you hit enter, it updates it to that cell. So they're connected at all times. Now another example is, what if you wanted to link a value from one worksheet? Maybe I have another sheet here to here. How I'm going to do that is, let me just show you the other worksheet. I'm going to go ahead and go to the next worksheet, link from here on the right hand side of it. And what if I wanted to link this very last value, 1130, to that cell? All you have to do is build a formula for it. Let's go ahead and do it together. I'm going to put my equal sign in to let it know I want a formula. And this time it's not on this sheet, so I need to click on the sheet name. And then it filled in the formula, the sheet name with an exclamation point. And then I get to select the cell. And a lot of people, they want to click on the sheet here to take them back to the sheet, and then they want to hit enter. But if you do that, you will replace link from here with linking data, and it won't pull the correct cell. So all you have to do from this point, once you have the cell that you want to link, is just hit enter and let the software take you back to the original sheet with the cell linked. Like so. Alrighty, pretty nifty. Now the last one, the last method, is linking from another workbook. If you just go ahead and hold Control and the letter N, it will open up a brand new workbook. Notice how book 1, my old one's right behind it. Now I'm going to move this one to the side. And I'm going to go ahead and move this one to the side. That's just a Windows 10 feature known as Windows Snap, but not the lesson here. Now, what if I want to get this cell's value, and I want to link it to this book here? That's just another formula, and the most simplest way to do it is putting in an equal sign and then opening up that other book and selecting the cell. The syntax, we'll call it, to link another workbook to an existing workbook is putting the book name in brackets, and then the sheet name, and then an exclamation point with the cell address you're referring to. And when you go ahead and do that and hit enter, it will link in the value. Just be sure to keep it in the same local spot once the values are linked. Otherwise, it will have a hard time updating itself later on. Now, when you go ahead and close this book, so notice how it says book 1, sheet 1, A1. I'm going to go ahead and get this book over here and save it. And I'm just going to go ahead and just browse. I'm going to save it as book 1 onto my desktop. That's fine. Hit save. Now that I have book 1 in there, I'm going to close it. And I'm going to make this back to full screen. I just want to show you the change in the formula now. Because I have the book closed, it needs the location of it and the book name with the file type and the sheet name with an exclamation point and then the cell address. So you need to have the direct path for it to be linked. Go ahead and try those out. Expose yourself to the different methods of linking workbooks and start thinking, what workbooks can you link to benefit you? All right. I'm currently on the protection sheet in the sample file provided. Go ahead and go to that. Once we are on the protection sheet, let's all go ahead and hover over to our review tab and give that a click. Now, a great tool that's very underutilized in Excel are comments. You can comment on certain cells to leave a little remark or a little pointer about it so that when you send the file to someone, they can go ahead and view the comments. Now you're going to notice that one of these cells has a little tiny red triangle in the corner of it, right there. Now if you hover over that cell, that is a comment. And the reason why I asked you to go into your review tab is this is how you add in comments. Let's go ahead and put the cell next to it. Let's go ahead and select that cell. And let's add in a new comment. Comments are super useful when collaborating, when sharing files. So that way you can talk about things without actually emailing back and forth. Now you can go ahead and put the comment there and they can hover over it and they can see the comment when they hover over it. Or you can go into your review tab and turn on show all comments. And that allows the comment to remain on the screen at all times. Now these comments, if you click on them, notice how you can adjust the size, you can make them bigger and smaller. If you go to the border of them, you can move them around and an arrow points to the cell that they're referring to. So use these comments to communicate with one another amongst the worksheet. And if you ever need to remove a comment, like the one I just added, you can go ahead and select it and choose to delete it. Or if you ever need to edit a comment, you can go ahead and select the comment and choose to edit the comment. Now, once a workbook has a lot of comments in it, a great tool to navigate through the workbook and make sure you don't miss any comments is by using the next and previous to navigate through all the comments on the workbook. And then you can go ahead and answer each remark. Go ahead and play around with comments, try adding one by yourself, turning on show all comments, and exposing yourself to the various settings. I'm currently on the protection sheet provided in the sample file given in this course. Let's go ahead and go to that sheet. And I'm going to zoom in a little bit. FAS will always protect you. Unless you unlock your cells, those FAS won't protect. Alrighty. And over here we have a comment. Let's unlock these cells. The yellow cells then protect this sheet like a knight in shining armor. So in Excel, you can have certain cells be protected, meaning a user can't type into them, while other ones can be typed into. So in this example, what I want to do is I want to have these cells be able to be filled in, meaning a user can go ahead and put value into these cells. But if they were going to click anywhere else, they can't. It's locked. In order to do that, it's a two-step process. You first must unlock the cells and then protect the sheet. Keep in mind you can do the whole workbook, but we're just going to do the sheet. Now let's talk about unlocking cells. Let's highlight this area over here and let's right click it and expose ourselves to the fact that you have an option to format these cells. I'm going to give that a click and you should too. So just highlight this chunk of cells, right click, go to format cells. We've used this window a lot, typically for number, alignment, font, and border, but very rarely for protection. Let's go ahead and give that a click. And notice how these cells are locked. Every cell on every spreadsheet by default is locked. Let's unlock these ones and then hit OK. So that's step one, unlocking the cells. Now in your review tab, you have the ability to protect the sheet in the review tab. Or you can also right click the sheet and you're going to see the option to protect sheet is right there and they're the same thing. I'm going to go ahead and choose the right click from the sheet name. And I'm going to choose to protect the sheet. I can password protect the sheet. Keep in mind there's no help desk you can call if you forget the password. I can also allow the users of this worksheet to only select the unlock cells. So the lock cells, everything they can't touch. Just the cells that I let them touch, they can touch. And then I can hit OK. But before we hit OK, just be aware that there's a bunch of settings that you can control on a workbook. Like whether or not a person can insert hyperlinks, delete columns, delete rows, if they can sort, if they can edit objects, all these different various settings that you can control. And once you hit OK, you're going to notice how up here in the review tab, the option became unprotect. And over here in protection sheet, when you do a right click, you're going to notice the option to unprotect sheet. Now you're going to go ahead and just try to click on any cell, and it's not working for me. Scroll down a little bit. Try clicking on any cell. It's not working. Can I move the comment? Nope, it's stuck. But let me go into these yellow cells, the ones that I unlocked. Can I put the number 1 in? Great. 2, 3. Oh, it went right to the next cell that I unlocked, 6. So as you can see, protection is pretty useful. So you can have certain fields to be filled in, and certain fields they can't. Kind of building a user form for someone. Go ahead and play around with protection. Play around with the various other settings. And keep in mind, if you forget your password and you so happen to use one, you cannot go back into that file until you figure out that password. There's no help desk you can call.